So he ended up firstly causing me to crash in the process, which was terrible. But also, secondly, I learned from that once again, when I say I want something, I've got to trust my own judgment and go with it. So, and eliminate the people who are not willing to accept your judgment. You know what I mean? So, in a big way, that's how racing and motorsport gave me my voice. Physical experiences of having to say no, and as I started making a success of my racing and my career through it, I learned that I was also being seen as a bit of a role model, you know, and how I now use my voice would affect more than just myself.
I'm Telana Simpson, and let's talk communication. Today with Wilmarie Janse van Rensburg. When thinking of women in motorsport in South Africa, Wilmarie Janse van Rensburg is one of the first names to come to mind. Using the context of her achievements in motorsport and in business, Wilmarie shares some of the lessons she learned from racing on the racetrack and how they can be translated into life skills, and specifically in how we express ourselves in challenging environments. Wilmarie, could we start maybe by you just sharing a bit about how you became to be known as South Africa's Speed Queen?
That kind of title is not something that just comes easy. My background in terms of that would be, you know, I started on 50cc motorcycles, moved to 125cc's, and only really when I got to 250s did I start becoming really competitive. You know, it just suited me perfectly size-wise. It was a two-stroke. Everything about the bike just worked for me, and I had a good support structure. I had a role model at that stage, kind of support system that worked. And I then started in terms of, when I started off, I was competitive. When I raced 250s, I was fast, you know, so I started beating the boys. And soon I started setting up lap records, beating the second guy by 10 seconds. So that's quite a big thing, you know, because in racing, a second is like a mile. It's a lot. So 10 seconds was a big deal. And so the media started calling me the fastest woman and superwoman and all kinds of things. And at that stage, the guy I was dating decided, no, he's going to name me Speed Queen. So it kind of just stuck with me. And that came about.
Great. So just in terms of that, then your background then was starting to race in a very, at that time, male-dominated. I think you were one of the first women, is that right?
Yes.
Who started competing in the world of motorbike racing.
Yes. When I started racing, there was no other woman involved. I started at the age of 16. I wanted to just do this thing. I wanted to compete against the guys, and I loved motorbikes, and I thought, you know what, I love being the first at something I do anyway. It was a challenge, and I love a challenge. I've always seemed to have just, you know, where there's a challenge, I go. So I was the only woman for about 8 years, which is quite a long time looking back now. I mean, time flew, but for the first 8 years, it was really just finding my feet and putting my stamp down and becoming one of the boys, you know, if I can call it that, because, you know, it's all fun and games when you compete as a lady, but when you want to be serious about it, then, you know, it puts it in a whole nother bracket. And so it gave me time, the first 8 years, to, other girls started seeing what I was doing. One of the girls was Janine, that started straight after me. And I think it was a race that I won at Midville. And she came to me and said, look, I love this. How can I get involved? You know, so for me, the next step was to also help someone else, another woman. And, you know, today she's still racing and she's doing exceptionally well. So, you got to, you got to do something for yourself, but you've got to also be willing to give something back.
So, Wilmarie, well, what really interests me about your story, was the fact that you started out, so young, 16 years old, but in an environment that was very male-dominated at that stage, if we can use that. So I'm assuming that it was quite difficult, a lot of resistance in that environment, with you coming in as one being very young, but also a woman into a sport that was predominantly just, involved men just. So I actually want to just ask you a bit about how you found that, and if you have any learnings that you could pass on to maybe someone else who's trying to pursue a dream but is finding the environment that they're in quite threatening, or so different to them that that's part of the challenge.
One of the things that I've had to learn is am very focused, and that's something that would generally, when I started off, I didn't quite know how to get the balance with that, but I was focused and determined, which was a very good thing starting in this industry. I wasn't going to let any guy and any man tell me I can't, and that's not my place. It also has a bit of a personal story or history, on my hand and on my side, because I don't know my father, and racing is perceived, and it is rightfully so, has been very much a male-dominated sport, and it still is in terms of numbers, but it's also a father-son sport. So I don't know my dad, and then I'm a woman on top of that. So I was really, really stepping into territory that just it hasn't been done, and I knew that what I was doing now was not going to be easy. So I would say the first thing is, choose your battles, because if you know that this is going to be a tough journey, and you're starting new ground, you've got to be willing to take what comes with it. You know what I mean? Firstly, I had to learn to switch off what I wanted to listen to, and then also take what I felt was relevant. But I had to choose who I took advice from, and who I was willing to listen to. So for a long time, I had to just I had my vision. We have a dream and we have a vision, and generally you can't expect people to see it the way you do. So you've got to just push through regardless, but choose your support structure as well, because that is the thing that helps you when you do get down, because you do. So I'm not going to lie and say that it was an easy journey, because it wasn't. It really wasn't. But I was so focused on what I know I wanted to achieve that I just took it one day at a time. And fortunately, I've got to say this as well, and people make that mistake, I think, is that I had an intense passion for what I was doing. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have been able to push through the difficult times. So, don't try and go into an industry or what I'm trying to say is I did it for all the right reasons. It was my passion. It someone else, or to so it was for the right reasons that I pursued it, that I was able to stay focused, and then select the people around me that I saw that was constructive and not the opposite. Because these days people tend to, they don't want to see you succeed. It's very hard for people to see that. So you've got to be very careful, because the people closest to us sometimes are the ones that will pull you down.
Yeah. No, which is quite sad and ironic, but
yes.
Yeah. So one of the other things, reading up about you in prep for this was, you said somewhere in one of the articles that motorsport gave you independence and a strong voice on many different levels. So I just wondered if you could expand a bit on what you meant by that.
Well, motorsport for me in many ways helped me find my feet and my place, type of thing. Yes, I had a passion for it, so I was pursuing it and I was focused on it. But as I went along, I also realized that I was good at it, so it automatically started helping me with my confidence on so many levels. It helped me to say my say. And a lot of people these days say they don't so blatantly honest, and that's what motorsport helped me with, because I had to say, if a guy wanted things his way, and I'm talking from a motorsport point of view, this is not even relationship related in any way,
Yeah.
but if they wanted something their way and I didn't agree, I was either going to be bulldozed, or I needed to say no, and this is why. So, and these are things people struggle with in life in general sometimes, relationships, work relationships, whatever the case might be. So from that aspect, racing quickly taught me that if I don't want my suspension that way, and I want it this way, that I shouldn't settle for anything less. If I don't want that sponsor to be associated with me, regardless of that it's money, I have a valid reason for that, being personal, whatever, I have to say no. So I had to really make compromises and learn to take, there was consequences for each decision that I made, but I quickly started trusting my own judgment. And I learned that when I say no, and quickly other people in the racing also learned that when she says no, or she wants it that way, that is what she wants. I'm going to give you a perfect example of something that happened to me in the racing. And I had a technical guy that was setting up my bike, my suspension and everything. Now, anyone that understands racing would know that suspension is 80% of your success. And yes, horsepower is important, but the bike must handle for you. And I wasn't happy with the setup, and I wanted it a specific way, and he felt that he just knew better and he wanted it his way. So he ended up causing me to crash in the process, which was terrible, but also secondly, I learned from that once again, when I say I want something, I've got to trust my own judgment and go with it. So, and eliminate the people who are not willing to accept your judgment. You know what I mean? So, in a big way, that's how racing and motorsport gave me my voice. Physical experiences of having to say no. And as I started making a success of my racing and my career through it, I learned that I was also being seen as a bit of a role model, and how I now use my voice would affect more than just myself. It's other ladies in the sport, and I think that's where Motorsport South Africa came to me and said, you know what, we want you to run Women in Motorsport for South Africa. So it was quite a big task, because it's where I was now used to one category, which was mine. I now had to look after about 18 categories. Now this is categories I didn't know anything about, from off-road cars to bikes to, everything in motorsport with wheels, basically. So I realized that this was a big task, but I could only use what I've learned and try and bring that across in some way to each category and women involved, so that they can take something of it and make it personal, to help them as well, to get that voice and to go a step further. That answers your question, how racing gave me the voice. Unfortunately, sometimes it's a tough learning experience that helps you with that. So, yeah.
So another question I wanted to ask, in terms of, so there was you said a challenging, 8 years, and I suppose there's lots of challenges even past that, but so partly it was learning to say no and having the experiences that had to teach you to trust yourself.
Yes.
What role did spirituality, or has spirituality played in you also finding the inner strength?
Yes, well, my Christianity, I've always been, a lot of us think you want to live right and you want to do the right thing, and, you go to church and you're Christian and you understand a basic of it, but part of my drive in motorsport was very self-driven from a point of view that I was hurt by not having a father that, you know, left it before I was even born, and not having any male support over the years. So I was driven by the fact that I didn't have male support, and I wanted to prove that I can be just as good and better. So it wasn't all healthy, but it was also used for a specific reason. But when I got to a point where I was halfway through my period with women in motorsports, you know, because you have like a 3-4 year period that you sign up for as president. You want to stay committed. I changed because I became a reborn Christian, and I realized in the process that I can't be putting that they can do this all by themselves. They don't need a man, you know, because it's a little unhealthy as well, because men do play good roles, you know, they are supportive and they can be supportive, and they should be, you know, in the sport too. So my message started changing there from a point that I wanted it to become rather a family sport. You know, the guys support the women, but don't just try and do it all on your own, you know. So in other words, your own strength is fine up to a point, but then you've got to also trust in, and my inner strength came from my Christianity, because I didn't have a role model or a support structure, or if I can call it a framework to take reference from, you know, what's right and what's not right and how to do things. And it's played a big role in relationships as well, you know, because I choose the bad boys, because I'm kind of an adrenaline person. So you choose the ones that are not really ideal, you know, for long term. So all of that has played a role. And when I became a reborn Christian, I realized that I had to change, because women, you are it for a reason, but you don't necessarily always want to be that. You do want to have that guy to stand by you, you know, and support you and uplift you in what you do. And from a motorsport point of view, I just try to get that message across to other women, to say it's great what you do, and it's a strength, and it's independent, and it's wonderful, but you don't have to do it alone. You know what I mean?
Mm. So again, it sounds like about finding the balance.
Yes, 100%. That's been my journey, finding the balance.
So just kind of to change tracks, from my brief experience, I've recently, like a year ago, started riding a scooter, and thoroughly enjoying it, but really felt that, you know, my assertiveness has been very valuable in helping keeping me safe on the road. I mean, that's from being like very clear on like where I want the bike to go, and just engaging with the other drivers. So wondering just if you could comment, what your comment on that would be.
Yes, you know what, that is another aspect of racing that's kind of also my personality is, and when I talk about this, you know, in terms of motivating women or people, I say that, you know, the way you are as a person, you can't be a soft, gentle walk over and then expect to be in a sport like this and you know, put your stamp down and say, no, you can't just overtake me like that, or because you'll let everyone go past around every corner, you know. And the same applies on the road then. It's you got to take in your place. And racing has taught me a lot of independence in many ways, but also it's given me a lot of strength, you know. And when I started the academy, for example, I think this was about 11 years ago, I started, my training courses was also built around, especially in the beginning, teaching women how to ride. And one of the key things were that you've got to, you know, you can't, this is not painting lessons. You know, if you want to learn to ride, you've got to understand that you've got to be assertive, and you've got to be firm, you've got to make a decision. And if you want the bike to turn, then turn it physically. You know, if you want it to stop, then stop it. And also, you know, taking your place on the road. And so it is a big challenge. So you've got to be mentally willing to do it. Physically, it's not really all that necessary, but mentally more than anything else. And that same kind of training that I've built into my course, you know, teaching women, that's the kind of thing that gives you independence. It's like a strength that is difficult to explain, because once you didn't know how to ride a bike and now you know how to ride a bike, it is a sense of independence and freedom that only once you've done it, you'll understand it.
True.
You know, and yes, and from what it is face quite a lot of challenges. You know, when I've had to overtake guys and that, I've had to make a firm decision that I was going to do it, push in my physical strength. I can't compete. But in racing, fortunately, up to a certain level, it wasn't relevant. You know, it was more a mind thing and skill. So, and that's what gave me independence. You know, that kind of thing. It is a sense of freedom and strength that I can't explain. Because when you're overtaking guys that are really good at what they do themselves, and purely based on skill and mind power, you know, then that's it's a kind of an untouchable feeling. So it's a rush. It's like my drug. It was my own drug for years, you know, racing. It's adrenaline. You know, every time you take that step, it's like, oh, I've done it. Okay. But the thing with racing that I love so much, and I think that's why a lot of people also ride bikes and scooters, is, although mine's a lot more in an advanced level, is that I was never the best. I never had a perfect lap. There's always something you can do better. There's always something you need to change to get a quicker lap time, or something you must do better, you know, or you just make a mistake. And those are the kind of things that I've learned in life too. Those principles have helped me in life skills too, that things happen, you know, and push through. You make mistakes, sometimes you pay a hard price, which would be a crash. You know, you pick up and you carry on. You can't afford to, you know, just like go lie down and let everyone walk over you. Because if I ever, in racing, one thing as well was, if I showed weakness, the boys would just eat you up. You know what I mean? So I remember going into my van and crying my eyes out because I was so upset and felt so intimidated, and I was so scared at one point as well, that but I could not afford to show them. I had to do that in my own private time. So it's okay to do that with someone you maybe trust, you know, in circumstances where you don't show weakness. So, but then I got to get back out there and put on my race face, call it. And those in real life too, you know, in working environment, in relationships, sometimes you got to just suck it up and go.
Yeah, so to have a space where you can be vulnerable and, you know,
Yes.
and deal with whatever is coming up for you, but then, as you say, suck it up. So what then helped you do that? Do you mean, so was it because you did have that safe space to go and express what was going on for you?
What helped me actually go through with the racing?
Yeah, it was step out and put your race face back on, as you called it. Was there?
Well, yeah, for one, the thing that that helped me just to, you know, tackle a situation again was I had a passion for it. I had a real passion for it, you know, and secondly, I did enjoy a challenge. So, you know, I'm not someone that likes to just quit. And that's one thing racing taught me. I could have done that. I can't tell you how many times. You know, there was if there's a tough time, people tend to quit these days. And racing has taught me there's no ways I can do that. You know, there's and one of the years really in my racing career where it was a valuable reminder for me again was when I had a lot of sponsors involved. So now it wasn't just racing for myself. Now I had people paying for me to get results. And I was going through a tough time. At that stage, I was about to get married and ended up walking away from the marriage. So it was a very big public breakup as well. And my business was taking strain at that stage. And I was also starting to build the ladies class in Superbike. So I had so much pressure on me to perform, and I was in no emotional state to do. And I cannot tell you how many times I wanted to just walk away and quit, and I just wanted to give up. And because I had such a passion for what I was doing, I was even losing my passion. It was like people were ruining that for me, you know. But I knew that I can't just drop people. I had other people involved here now, so I had to see it through. Even if it wasn't for me at that stage, I was doing it for them. So I was really pushing through in that specific time in my career. Get a bad example, and then I also pushed through for the sponsors. So I gave them an okay result at the end of the year, but it wasn't great. And it was a very tough lesson for me, because I walked away very disappointed with my result, but also I was emotionally just not in a good place. And I felt like after all these years, my racing joy was stolen from me, you know, my life. Because look, racing wasn't just racing, it was my life. It was where I used to socialize, it was where I was working now in terms of my academy, and it was also my sport, it was my, you know, which was also my career. So it felt like my whole life was falling apart, and I had to take a bit of a break, you know, which is also sometimes really, and it's always good when you get to that point. And I took a year off, and I got someone, and I thought I would never go back, but I wasn't happy with the way I walked away. And that for me is a key lesson people need to realize is how you leave something behind, because it will haunt you if you don't do it on your terms. And when I say your terms, you got to be happy to walk away, you know, like where someone came back and said to me, don't you want to race? And I said, you know what, right now, financially, I'm not going to invest any money, you know, because I was busy building a new business. And he said to me, you know what, I'll pay for everything. And I said, but why? He said, no, I don't know, I love seeing you beat the boys, you know. So I said, okay. And I kind of was at a place where I felt comfortable to go and do it for me again. I had no pressure, and I said to him, look, you know what, I've done it for so long on everyone else's terms as well, that I want to now do it on my terms. So when I don't want to race, if I wake up in the morning I don't want to go, are you going to be okay with it? So I was very open and upfront about it, and he said, yes, it's your choice, you know. So I said, thank you. But I ended up racing every single race, and my very first race back was a second place, and it was on the 1000cc. So it was, in the moment that I got on that bike and I raced, I realized that this is me, you know, this is what I love, and this is what I'm good at. And I felt so much joy again. And I said to him, but I'm doing this here and I'm finishing it. So I walked away from my racing career after on my terms. That if I can give someone advice there, it would just be that make sure that you do it when you are ready, you know, not when other people tell you to give something up that you're really passionate about or walk away from. And if you can't do it at that stage for whatever reason, be it financial, emotional, you know, there's always, you can come back and finish things off. I'm really given a second chance to do that. Today I'm retired. It's 2 years since I've raced, and I have people asking me every day, don't you miss it? Don't you want to get back into it? And I say, yes, I miss the riding. I missed what racing did for me. But I'm so content with my decision, because I knowingly made it, knowing that, you know, that I'm going back to race for me on my terms, because I love it, and I will finish the year, whichever way I finish it, I was okay with it. So I put enough pressure on myself to do things the right way, but not so to the point where I wasn't enjoying what I do anymore. Because people tend to also steal our joy, you know, when, and in my case in racing, it was the moment someone have money, they think that, you know, and that was also something I had to learn very quickly, that it's got to be my terms as well, you know. And that's one of the places where me learning to speak up and say how I feel was so important to how I ended up walking away from racing. Because let's honest, it's not a full-time thing. It's a very physical sport. You hurt yourself. I've broken a lot of bones, you know, and you can't do it forever. I am a woman. I have kids as well. So it was the right time for me to walk away. And I'm so happy with the way I did it. But I wouldn't have been if I didn't go back and do it the right way.
As you're saying, on your terms, so speaking up, yeah.
Yeah. And just realizing again that you got to enjoy what you do. Eh? I can't stress that enough. If you don't, what is the point? You know, life is just too short.
Yeah. Sure, I think there's so many lessons. Some of the other things you speak about quite a bit is the one is about focus. So obviously being passionate about what you do helps you give that focus. But is there anything else that you've learned around that word focus?
Well, focus is something that when I do a presentation, I use the word focus from and I can use it 100% relating to what I did. I normally put a picture up on the slide where, I'm looking through the corner, and it's focus, that gets me from entering the corner to mid-corner to exit. And that's the kind of lesson that I like to teach when I do these talks in terms of any decision we make. It has a beginning, it has a mid, and it has an end. And if you firstly don't have the right focus going in, you're going to miss a very valuable aspect, which in racing would be the apex. And if you miss that, you generally go off the track, or go off the road. So you miss your end goal, ultimately. Where, let's say you have your focus in the beginning is great, and halfway through you get distracted, and you look at the wrong stuff. Where in life you can really make a mistake, and that can be anything from the wrong people distracting you, where in racing it would be other bikes, or it would be we've had things where animals would run across the road. If you look at the wrong thing, it distracts you. You can't reach your end goal, which is the exit point. So and then when you do make your when you have a successful entry in an apex and an exit, and you were focused on each one, then ultimately that's how you get through each challenge, each step. And that's what racing is for me. Every corner is a challenge. I can go in incredibly slow at my own pace, or slow pace, and the slower I go, the further, the closer here. So it's okay to look just here, if your pace is very slow. We have something that we teach in advanced racing, when you start teaching someone advanced riding skills, is that the further ahead you look, the more your lean angle can be, and the quicker you're going to get through the corner. So you can't go through obstruct type of way of looking at things, because you won't get through the corner. You'll make a mistake. And it's kind of principles that I apply in life, and that I teach people in real life as well, that if you want to get ahead, you got to make sure, yes, you have steps you've got to focus on the way, but you cannot take your eye off the end goal. And the further ahead you look, the more you're going to be able to see, in order for you to process, to make your decisions on the way. So it's such a relevant life skill for me, and something that I have physically applied that helps me in real life. You know what I mean? And if my focus was in the wrong place, I put a picture up normally of a guy that's literally 90% crashing, but he's still hanging on to that bike for dear life, the handlebars. And then I say there that so he's like upside down looking at the wrong side of the bike instead of where he wants to go. And then my message there would be, if your focus is in the wrong place, there's no ways you're going to make it. You know what I mean? That's just how it is. And that's the reality of any decision that we make, big or small. and go through the gravel and get back on track and you're okay, or you end up hurting yourself, you know, in real life.
Well.
For me, is that.
Yeah. And another skill I think you speak about in terms that you've learned from racing that translates to, and I suppose this relates to that, getting to where you want to go, is around consistency.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the kind of racing that I chose in motorsport is it's a tar surface that is predictable to a point, okay? In other words, it's not off-road racing where there's suddenly new rocks and trees or whatever the case might be that jumps out. So I have a set course that I can visualize in my mind that's there, that I've seen, and now I've got to just keep improving on my braking mark, or where I start accelerating, or where I start picking up the bike, those kind of things. So the moment I don't have a set reference point in terms of my apex and my exit, then I start becoming inconsistent, and it affects your lap times tremendously, you know. So you can't, my trainer used to say to me, who was my mentor as well, is that you know what, rather slow things down a little bit, okay, and be consistent for me in your lap times, than being completely erratic and you give me 1 or 2 quick lap times and it's pointless because you can't bring it home. Because it's a matter of the more consistent lap times I had, the quicker I was in total, you know, and the better at my race. That's the best type of racing I can have, is to have more consistent times than 1 or 2 quick ones. That is like, and we always say that also to people who, when I teach someone in terms of advanced riding, if they're quick and they don't really know how or why, they're not going to stay quick. The moment something comes and throws them off their pace a bit, they're not going to know how to get back to where they were. And in racing, that's something I've had to learn, is that when I brake here and I look there and I exit there, it'll give me this lap time. So if I want to go quicker, you know, I can change those things. But if I didn't know, move on them. And that's also something that for me is a life skill. You know, we put things in place and you can choose to just be comfortable, or you can push the boundaries a bit, you know, and be quicker. But overall, consistency is a big thing, because otherwise we tend to burn out as well. If in racing, is the quicker you push, like in a sprint race, for example, you are exhausting yourself to a level that I can't even explain. So it's very different to just practicing, you know, because the moment you start competing with someone, you are using extra energy. And if you don't practice on that level, then you exhaust yourself before you get to the checkered flag. So you can't maintain it. And basically it's about making sure that the energy that you put into what you do is something you can maintain, you know, in order to get there. Otherwise you won't, because a lot of the guys who become exhausted end up crashing because they can't hold the bike anymore. So they're trying to race at a level that's just not consistent and manageable. And that's the same kind of things I think we do in life too.
True.
Is we try and run it at your, but it's burnout. I mean, I'm guilty of that myself. You know, and I think people who tend to drive hard and push themselves hard is more likely to experience those kind of things, because they got to know when to pull back a little bit and let go.
And I think now what I've just picked up from what you're saying is also just that in terms of practicing at the level where that level of energy is needed. So in terms of us in life, is we need to maybe develop the capacity for a certain level and be able to be consistent at that, and then push it to the next just a little bit more and become consistent at that, rather than, you know, extreme one way and then not be able to maintain it. So oh, very interesting.
100%. You know, I've even learned that with a lot of my corporate deals and that I do in business, is I've had to take a lot of, let's call it failures, and a lot of no's on high levels, because I push myself in business too, where I want to be able to work with that corporate and that corporate, you know. But I had to work with a few to get a few no's. Eventually I got to where I had enough to be good at my approach, you know, and consistently with corporates on that level now, where I started getting the business, you know. But that doesn't just happen with a quick flash in the pan, because those kind of, if you do get a deal like that, then well done, you know, but you generally wouldn't know how to do it again, you know. So that's kind of how I relate the racing to that, you know, the lap time with the success in business as well.
Great. Well, as we start to wrap up now, I think the last question I just want to ask, I mean, for me, I wanted to highlight from your story around the assertiveness, you know, being assertive, and as we just said now, some of the others, the focus and consistency. But is there anything else that you would say, you know, you've learned around communicating and relating to others? You know, having been in that environment where you were, you know, the first woman, so very challenging, you know, hostile in a way environment, and being able to succeed in it, to translating it through now to in the business world. But is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you think is really important that you've learned about communicating with others and building relationships?
There's a few things on communication on that topic that's been quite interesting for me. But something I do want to add as well is also people perceive us. They will perceive us the way we portray ourselves, and I think people don't take that serious enough. And I saw that in my racing, in terms of the kind of sponsors I was willing to associate with or not, the kind of publications I was willing to go into or not, you know, and that very quickly on in life can label you and harm you. You know, I remember a couple of years ago that a magazine wanted to do a shoot with me with very little like lingerie and things like that, and I ended up saying no, because it was a very popular magazine, but I felt that I don't want to portray women as umbrella girls, and I mean that with utmost respect, because there's very pretty umbrella girls, but I'm capable of a lot more than that, and I don't want my body to be showcased for men, you know, from that.
Yeah.
I want as a rider, as a competitor, and as a woman rider and competitor, you know. So I had to say no for a few things like that, and I've had to say no a few times for holding a guy's umbrella, for example, you know, and not with any meanness. I just had to learn to say, you know what, I'd love to, but I can't, and you know, and this is my reason why. So, and because of that, it brought me a lot of respect from the right people in the industry, you know, that I'm able to, a couple of years later, I mean, I have a sponsorship from a company called KMSA, who have sponsored me for the last 6 years still, and I'm not even racing anymore, you know, and they're still involved with me, because I think it's got a lot to do with the way I was willing to portray myself, and they bought into that, you know, they want to be associated with that. So, you know, from communication point of view, you've got to know what's good for you and not, you know, and from a personal brand point of view, you've got to know who you want to associate with, why, and because that has an effect on you long term. We've had a lady in our racing who said, very bad. That's the image that she's got attached to her now, you know, and a lot of people see that, and a lot of big sponsors have walked away from her because of that. She's got the talent. She's got so much talent. But because of the image she's portrayed, they don't want to be associated with that. So that's a very sad thing. And I think you've got to realize that in terms of just any aspect of business too, is sometimes you're going to have to say no, even if it's really something you want, but maybe long term it's going to harm you. And or where it is you're wanting to go, which brings me back to your focus. You know, you got to know where it is you want to go, because it'll help you with all these little decisions you got to make on the way as well. So that was, yes, that was a big tool for me. And then there's a more like interesting is when I started racing overseas, and I had to go do a race in Portugal. I was competing. It was a women's team with some French ladies, and we were competing against guys there. We were the only girls team, and it was our first time racing together. So that on its own, it's already, you know, a challenge. And I think I just came back from, I broke my wrist before. A 500-kilometer endurance race is intense on your body, and it's 1,000 cc, and it's a very fast track. It's over 300. You do over 300 kilometers per hour at a certain section, so it's very high strain, you know. And we're going to a different country where you don't understand the language, and the girls were French, and the technician was Portuguese, and now I had to communicate, you know. So I ended up being the one who had to set up the suspension for everyone, you know, because I understood suspension very well. I made it my business to understand that. And it was so interesting to see how we were from two different nationalities, you know, and languages, yet we could still communicate the same language, you know, when it came to the suspension. I have a photo that was taken of me while we were busy doing all hand signals, you know, talking. But we managed to communicate. You know, we had a goal, and we had the same goal, and we knew where we were going, and we wanted to go, but we just had to get that message across to each other in a way that the other one could understand. And for us, it was had to explain. And he would do it, and I would say, no, that's terrible, it didn't work, you know, let's try another one, go the other way. So that was fun, you know. And again, it's just, we had the same goal, all of us. We had to just find a way for the other one to understand what it is you were trying to say. And ultimately, we got podium. We were the first women's team ever in the world to get a podium. So, and I think we still are, you know, today, from an endurance point of view. So we achieved what we wanted to, you know, in the process. Was it difficult? Yes, but it was fun as well.
It's a great example of how communicating doesn't need to just be on words. I mean, if you 100%. Don't speak the same language, it doesn't mean you can't actually get a message across and receive. Yeah,
100%. And it boils down to, I think the most important thing there is people, you have to understand the end goal. Because everyone that understands that's the first thing. I mean, you and I can be in business, and I have a situation like that now with a partner, and we're busy separating. We are not seeing the same, we don't have the same focus for the end goal. And now because of that, we are busy separating. My choice is to do it a nice way, in the best possible way for everyone, so we're going to try and do that. But we're not seeing eye to eye. So you got to walk away from those situations too, you know what I mean? But in a case where you do have the same end goal, and you might just have different upbringings, you know, or different, how can I say, you've studied in a different way, so you've got different experiences. It doesn't mean you can't make it work together as a team, you know. So from a team building effort, that's kind of the message I'd want to say. It's just finding each other's strengths and using that well, then trying to put each other down, because people do that easy.
So maybe I want to just ask you, like, where to from here, or like what you're involved in today. But before that, just you've obviously brought it up a few times around focus and knowing where you want to go to, like having been very clear on that end goal. What has helped you then become so clear on that? Because, you know, I know a lot of people, I mean, I do coaching, and that's part of the coaching process, is helping people get more clarity on what it is they want and where they want to go. But is there anything, is it just because the passion for what you were doing is so strong that you kind of, the end was so clear to you? Or is there anything that's helped you just
to decide where I'm going now? It's okay. I'm going to answer that from a point of view in terms of where what I'm focused on now.
Okay.
Currently I am focused on. I started a youth company called Be Unique, and that for me is my new phase. If I can call it, it's a new season of my life, and the same energy and experiences that I put into the first phase of my life, and the learning curves that, the tough ones even, that I went through, I want to now use the right way for this next season of my life. I've changed my outlook. It used to be all for me, and now I'm changing it because I've had so much joy in what I've done and achieved, that I want to be able to use that to help the youth to experience the same. So my new season's a little bit different. So my focus is still very much on passion, but it's using everything I've learned the last 18 years and passing it over onto the youth so that they can experience true passion and their talent and also make a difference. And the way I want to do that is through Be Unique career guidance, where currently I'm talking at schools. So I'm doing career guidance talks at the schools. But my ultimate goal is to do public speaking on an international level. But for me to get internationally recognized and talk to the youth in terms of their choices, career choices, I have to start local. And my first starting point is schools, and then I've started talking at some corporate companies already from a motivational point of view. But I got to keep my focus on them, because it's where I want to make a difference. And if I can say how I got to this decision and why, is I got to a point where I sat back and I thought, why is it that I've done so many different things in my life? Well, a lot of people choose one career and they kind of stick with it, forever. And for me, I've done so many different things. I've done event management. I've done, so when there's something I don't know how to do, I go figure out how to do it just because I want to know. And then I find out, okay, I know now, sorry, but I don't enjoy it, so I'm not going to keep doing that. And so I did a lot of that, in the last 18 years. And there's a reason for that, because it's given me a type of a life skill that I can use with my racing and with my experience and pass on. And ultimately, everything I've learned is passion comes first. And you can have a passion for 5 things, but now you've got to start just getting some exposure in your different passions. What is it I like? Okay, and now I'm getting exposed, like job shadowing or internship, for example, and then go see, out of those 2, which one do you like most? And if that's the one you like, just also make sure that you do your research, that it's something you can sustain. Like I knew racing was short term. It wasn't going to be till I'm 40 or 50, you know what I mean? So it would only give me an income for so long. And I had to then do something else. Where me teaching the youth long term, from a business point of view, I look at it, there's always youth studying. There's always going to be youth leaving school and needing guidance. That's not going to dry up. So if I make that decision from a business point of view, is very easy. Yeah. It's finding ways to get funds for it. That's a whole different challenge that I'm busy with now. But do I love what I'm doing? Absolutely. Do I enjoy public speaking? I love it. I love it. I love it. So again, I'm going into something I love, and I've learned as well that when you speak from experience, it's easy. The moment you start speaking from something that is don't ask me to talk about laptops and technical things about, So I would say, if I can sum it up, that my decision for my next season is based on me wanting to make a difference in life in general. And that's, I think, where the spirituality comes We need to leave a legacy behind. You know, people want to achieve success for themselves the whole time. It's such a self-driven, selfish kind of thing to do. And for some it works. For me, it doesn't. I've never been someone to just do stuff for myself. I do it to learn and to figure out how to, and then I want to pass something on. So that's always been my personality, and that's what I want to do now for the youth. And I want to use what I've learned, you know, for that. And will it become a strong business? Yes, I believe it can. You know, I've done my research on that in terms of public speaking, what you can get paid for. You know, so there's the reality to that as well. And I love traveling. So that's just another plus point, you know, to all of it. So I'm focused on that for my new season, you know, and leaving my legacy behind, because somewhere in the groups that I talk to, and at the end of the day, if I talk to 30 students and 2 of them get my message, you know, it's a successful message. And I love seeing those smiling faces after a talk coming up to me and saying, but I love this, you know, but you can see there's no life experience yet. And because it was so tough for me, I want to help. You know, I didn't have someone helping me saying, oh, don't go that way. You're going to burn your fingers. I had to just burn my fingers. And that was part of my motivation why I started the academy, is because my crashes on the bike was tough lessons. No one said to me, don't pull the front brake while turning. I'm just giving you an example. You know, I had to figure that out for myself. So as I crashed, I realized, oh goodness, that doesn't work. Why not? What should I do differently? And I slowly realized that I can now help other women and guys as well who don't know this to avoid those hard lessons. And, you know, here's a good course. Come with us and we'll teach you, and you can learn it in a day instead of crashing and it takes you 5 days or whatever. You know, so it's just always been my personality. So if someone else choose their direction, you know, moving forward, I would say passion, and I would say know your strengths, what you're good at, and know your weakness. You know, and you can work on some of those, but like accounting is not my thing. You know, so I've had to accept that. I'm creative, you know, so rather work with someone that's good with that can help you on that level. Talking, I'm good at that, you know, I enjoy it. So I understand my strengths by now, and I do understand my weaknesses as well, and I know my passion, and based on that, I am 100% focused on where I'm going.
Great. So how can people contact you and learn more about what you're doing now then?
Well, I've got a personal website now called SAspeedqueen.com. You know, so you can have a look there on the few things that I am doing. And you can also email me at wilmarie@sqracing.co.za, and it stands for Speed Queen. So, yeah, anytime, you know, and I love answering questions, and I love helping where I can. And if people have good ideas, I love to be involved in it too. Going and focus on it being youth related, you know what I mean?
Yes. Well, thank you so much for sharing so much. And do you have any parting thoughts then as we wrap up?
You know, for me, it's just it's been a wonderful journey, and it's important not to have regrets. And when I say that, people mustn't see failure as a regret, because when you fail at something, it just shows you really what you should do differently. You know what I mean? And not just give up. The word failure shouldn't be attached to giving up. It should just be, okay, change your strategy. And I think that's been part of my success as well, because people that know me well have kind of labeled me as very persistent, you know, in something that I believe in. So, yes, I know even in this youth business that I've started, there's been things I've had to change. Initially, I thought that's the way I would do it. You know, even though I've had to make some changes in terms of how I approach the youth business, it hasn't changed my focus, you know, and my end goal. So it's just a matter of changing my strategy for it to work.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Telana.
I'm Telana Simpson, and this has been Let's Talk Communication. For more information about the show and my guest today, Wilmarie Janse van Rensburg, please go to talkcommunication.innercoaching.co.za. Thanks for listening.